Good afternoon. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners work session. It's Thursday, July 1st, 2021, 2:02 p.m. My name is Time Answer, Chair of the Board of County Commissioners. To my left is the Vice Chair, Commissioner Gary Edwards, and to my right is Commissioner Carolina Mejia. We have County Manager Ramiro Chavez and several key pieces of our community planning and economic development team, including Director Josh Cummings, and Development Services Manager, Brett Burris, Planning, it used to be Long Range Planning, you don't call it that anymore.
Community Planning Manager.
Community Planning Manager, Jennifer Davis. Operations. Jennifer Davis. Wait,
Yep,
two Davises.
Not related.
Two J Davises? Man, don't do that to me. It's like having two RC Robin Campbell and Ramiro Chavez. We got Jeremy Davis, also from Cped. Jeremy, remind me what your title is. Operations Manager.
Yes, sir.
Community Planning Manager, Development Services Manager. All right. Excellent. The topic today is professional services for planning. It's informational. We have an hour and we've got some materials in front of us. And Ramiro, when you
this is a follow-up to the many conversations the board has in many different stages. Even when you were considering approving the comprehensive plan and development code dockets, as to how professional services, also known as consultants, can be part of the process as we move along in delivering that scope of work. You will hear today, there's some opportunities that staff will give you a high-level overview of this, but also staff hopefully will take some time as to give you a perspective as to what the role the staff really does related to the docketing process. But also, I believe it's going to be providing an opportunity as to how the board may consider bringing some consultants, some aspects of delivering that very complex scope of work. Hopefully, and Brett is here also, we're looking from another aspect, and we're not ready this today, but as a follow-up as to how we can incorporate consultants also on plan reviews, or permit reviews, which is a different aspect of that as well. We have somewhat of a backlog. We're exploring some options on that as well. So what you hear today is, professional services, also known as consultants, and related to the comprehensive plan and the development code dockets. No other items here from the
Great, thank you, County Manager. So that was excellent setup. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. What you guys have in front of you, Commissioners, is this document. You guys have seen this before. This is the 5 years of change in Cped. And I guess I want to take just a minute before we dive deeply into this topic and say thank you. We've had many conversations about the many opportunities that Cped, formerly Resource Stewardship, has had to create improvements over the past few years. As the document states, 2019 was kind of the big deal in terms of people. We think of change in Cped in three ways: people, process, tools. And you can't change any of the process, or you can't get the right tools if you don't have the right people. And you guys have heard me say this before, but 2019 was that year of bringing on the leaders that really were able to look at what our process and tools were and try to figure out what we can do better. And so in that 2019 year, we hired Brett Burris and promoted Jeremy Davis and hired Jennifer Davis into their roles. And that was huge. You know, we talked about all the things that we needed to do in service to citizens, but if you don't have the right people, you can't do those things. And to have this, this is, I think, one of our first briefings where we've got essentially the dream team all together. It's nice to have smart people doing great things. So,
dream team.
Right? Exactly. That's to you guys. That's for you, Jennifer, Jeremy, Brett. You're welcome. And so kind of thinking big about this team that was looking at all these different things that needed to be accomplished. So they came on board in 2019, and I think that a lot of what we talk about can be clouded with emotion sometimes because it's people's houses and rezones and all that kind of stuff. But it's about the numbers for me. And if you look at those numbers in 2020, you can see that Brett's group had over 20,000 interactions with citizens, 4,000 permit applications, 460 single-family residential applications, 371 permits issued, and 996 inspections. This is just a high-level part of the number. And Jennifer's group they were able to complete about 10 items on the docket. That was more than I'd seen in my time here at the county in 1 year. They also were able to do 2 RIA plans, 1 habitat conservation plan that had taken 10 years, and 4 open space tax programs. They did the first transfer of development rights that happened in a couple of years. And so these are the same people that are working on all these projects. And so just within a year of these great leaders coming on board, we were able to create massive amounts of success. But that doesn't mean we're gonna stop, right? There's pieces where we think we can do better. And one of those conversations that keeps coming up again is the professional services. What can we potentially outsource? What do we need help with in terms of the expertise that we might not have within our own groups? And so we've heard that from the commissioners on multiple occasions and multiple different briefings. You know, how come you guys just don't think about getting a contractor to do this? Or how come we can't do this in this way? We needed to have the people in place, that's this team. We needed to have our processes going towards the direction that was gonna serve the citizens. And then we can think about the tools, right? We've talked about the database upgrade that we're engaged in. We've talked about the process that Brett's engaged in the project review timeline. And another one of those tools is outside consultants. And so this is the time. I'm excited to have this conversation. I think it's right, and we want to hear from you. You know, what we found is really impactful is having clear guidance from the Board of County Commissioners. And when we're able to just kind of throw it out on the table, say, here's what we're thinking, and here's where we think we're going, but then getting your input and helping us to make those decisions and then guiding us to the right spot has been super helpful. And I think one of the things that's really important for this conversation is customer service. We are committed to customer service in Cped. Bar none, that's our driving value. Transparency, consistency, and accountability in effort to provide great customer service to the citizens of Thurston County. This is key though. We have 3 customers. When we think of customer service, we think of 3 different customers. We think of the applicant, that's our first customer. The person that comes into the building development center or calls somebody on the telephone and says, hey, I wanna build something, or I wanna rezone something, or I've got this idea. That is the first customer. And our driver in helping that customer is to assist the applicant to do what they want with their land within code and ordinance. So that's customer 1. Any questions on customer 1? That's the one that everybody thinks of as the only customer. We have 2 other customers. The second customer is you, the Board of County Commissioners. The Board of County Commissioners sets the codes and ordinances that govern how we do the interactions with the citizens. And so it's this board that currently is in place and every other board that came before you that created those codes and ordinances. So in essence, our second customer is democracy. We're serving the elected officials currently and that came before in the code and ordinance. So that's customer number 2. Customer number 3 is the citizens at large. So the folks that are gonna use that building. It's up to us to ensure that those customers are served as well. So that when we permit a building, we don't permit a building that's gonna catch on fire and kill them. Or that we don't permit a building that's gonna slide down a slope and kill them. Or that we don't permit a well or septic or other items where they're gonna drink water that's infected with E. coli and they're gonna die. Like those are big things, and I'm sorry to be dramatic, but this is a job that's important. And so recognizing those 3 customers, that's not just the applicant, it's also the commissioners, current, present, and past, and all of the citizens of Thurston County. So when you think of Brett's group, you think of buildings catching on fire. When you think of Jennifer's group, you think of the neighbor that might not want that commercial building next to them as they're rezoning from residential to commercial. So those are the 3 customers that we're thinking about. And how do we provide that customer service is really the key to this conversation. Again, we're working on our processes, working on our tools. We know that we've got some gaps, and we know that we can fix those with some level of professional services. But it's gonna be a little tricky because it's so many bouncing balls with the different topics that we're working on. Brett has been highly focused on the project review timeline. Jennifer has a head start on him in the community planning group, as Romero kind of alluded to. So we're gonna focus on Jennifer's group first, and that's the community planning, the long-range planning, the vision, the docket items in the comprehensive plan, the rezones. And then we're gonna touch on some of the Brett's potential opportunities after Jennifer's part. So that was a huge preamble. I know it was a lot, but this is a big topic, and trying to pull all these strings together at 2 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon. I know you guys have had a lot going on already today, But I want to make sure that we see the big picture before we dive right into a little nitpicky, because there's a lot that's happened that's led us to this point. So I want to take a break, a pause in my own breath and catch it, and ask, is there any questions on the context, the big picture of where we were and where we are? Thoughts?
Oh, I guess my only thought would be, did you also consider the time frame it takes to accomplish the goal, whatever that might be, and
Yeah.
why this does seem to work for other jurisdictions?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's one of the reasons that Brett rose to the top in the candidate pool was because he had so much experience with other jurisdictions. And so he's brought that knowledge to our current planning group. Jennifer Davis brought the knowledge of working at Washington State Department of Commerce, so she had a wide view as well. And I would say in Jennifer's group, she brought right off the bat, streamlined the docket process. So our docketing process is much more clean than it was a year and a half ago. We've reduced fees, we've eliminated fees, we don't hold money. We used to charge a lot of money up front, even if we weren't gonna accept, if the board hadn't made a decision to accept it. So essentially we were holding on to people's money. Jennifer got rid of that, we didn't need it. So yes, the answer to your question, yes. Everything that we're looking at is informed by lots of experience from two great leaders in Jennifer and Brett, but also with Jeremy and how things are done in lots of different locations as well. I obviously had some caffeine today, so just keep me running. Any other questions on the big picture? Okay, Jennifer, are you ready to jump in after all that?
No, that was great. And I came from a couple of different state agencies, WDFW and DNR previously, as well as the county many years ago. Started my professional planning career at the county as a senior planner. So I haven't worked at Commerce, but work with Commerce all the time. So
Thank you.
there are, as a planning manager and as a career planner, you know, there are lots of places where I'd like to use professional services to help our docket backlog and to speed along our docketed projects to serve those customers that Josh described. And as you know, we have a lot of projects to get through. We're still digging out of a many year backlog, and we're just now kind of up to speed and almost fully staffed to be able to do that work. And, you know, Jeremy and I have spent a lot of time talking this over and talking, frankly, with HR to have an understanding of the types of work that is appropriate for such contracting and maybe less appropriate for professional services consultants. And the attachment to your briefing form describes those different types of work that we do in long-range planning in the community planning division. And we'll go over that a little bit more, but first I want to be very clear that community planning does not have a professional services budget. We cannot currently contract out for general funded long-range planning work. We charge some fees for our amendments. We charge fees for comprehensive plan amendments by citizens, but those only cover a small portion of what it costs to actually process that amendment. And we charge no fees currently for our development regulation code changes. So we don't have a budget for professional services, and we have very limited fees in long-range planning. We are able to contract out for work when and if we have a grant that may allow us to do so. So an example of this is some recent specialized GIS work that we're having done for our agricultural lands. And that project, we were able to use some of our HCP grant dollars because we were identifying lands that could also help implement the HCP through working lands easements. So we get creative sometimes with how we can use this. We're also using an ecology grant right now to fund a lot of our shoreline master program update work, including contracting out for services for an upcoming public outreach mailing. So those are sort of the limited circumstances we have right now to do professional services contracting. And the areas where that contracting can help include, and they're listed on the attachment provided, you know, research and analysis on complex planning topics where we might not have that in-house expertise. Activities like facilitating a stakeholder group around a controversial or complex planning topic. The county has had success hiring outside facilitators in the past who could come in as that neutral third party and and help a diverse group of perspectives come together and find some pathway forward for us. Conducting local studies on kind of unique issues like industrial needs, industrial lands, or how do we tweak the market for transferable development rights? How do we improve that? I have sort of a laundry list of topics that the ability to do small professional service contracts with experts in the field really would aid in making progress on the docketed items and meet your policy goals and meet those timing expectations that Commissioner Edwards mentioned. But, and this is, you know, eyes wide open, using professional services also comes with a cost beyond just the dollars. That sometimes using a contractor to do some of this important public policy work that affects a large part of our community brings with it a lot of public scrutiny. We've experienced that as well. We had experiences with that when we did some applicant-funded contracting for the recycled asphalt amendment project and code change work. There was a lot of public concern about the use of an applicant-funded contractor in that work, and county staff are the ones that field that concern and those comments and respond to those comments. You have an example right now about the with the wireless code update. The prosecuting attorney's office has a contractor on board to help with that update through their budget, and we've spent many hours fielding public concerns about assumptions made about that contractor and the neutrality of that contractor, and I think we've handled those questions quite well. And when the county does contract out for professional services, it serves us to pick neutral, skilled experts in the field that people will be able to have confidence in, that they're serving the interests of Thurston County and its citizens broadly, and not just a special interest group. So contracting out can come with some of those challenges as well. Another example, we had an inquiry recently about contracting out work on a major rezone that you have placed on the docket. You put it on in April, the Beaver Creek rezone and land use amendment, the Dolman property, several hundred acres, currently a dairy farm. You assigned it a lower priority on the docket, so we're not actively working on it now. We have about 13 other docketed projects ahead of it that we're actively working on. We're already getting a lot of community questions and concern about that project, even though we're not actively working on it. I've received several calls since it was docketed, and so there's work that comes with that. The applicant recently reached out and said, hey, can we hire someone to speed this along? Can we contract for some services to get this project going faster than you are able to do it? And I think with that kind of inquiry, it's something for the board to really consider and look at, because that will come with a cost of community reaction. I think the community is paying a lot of attention to this one and will want to have assurance that whatever process is followed maintains that kind of neutral professional perspective on all the work that might be done for this rezone and this land use amendment. And that's something that county staff always have top of mind: board priorities, citizen interests, the broad community interests, and we try to remain that neutral facilitative role throughout the process. And so you need to have those same qualities in whatever contractor you would bring on board to process something like this, especially a major amendment of this type with a lot of community interest and focus already. So it's a lot to consider. I think there are great ways we can use professional services, as I said, to move docketed items along. That could be super helpful and create, I think, actually better products in the end. And then there are places where it's a little stickier and a little more challenging. So that's all I kind of wanted to share. There's also the attachment so you can get a sense better of the specific types of work Jeremy and I have talked to HR about that would be appropriate or maybe not appropriate for professional services. And I'll just pause there and ask if there are questions.
So I might jump in real quick too. I think that there was a really key point that Jennifer's getting at. So as we talked about, we're already working through the backlog of all the major docket items. And as we think about the priorities of the board and what order they're in, having the space as we start to clear the decks essentially over the next couple of years, and then come back to some of those lower priority issues, that's where the real momentum is going to start to pick up. She mentioned the applicant-funded contractor, and so even when something goes on the docket, so like with the lakeside and the recycled asphalt, right? We're gonna get calls, and it's still staff work that goes into that. And one of the pieces when we're thinking about serving those 3 customers, the first customer needs a fair arbiter. There needs to be somebody with neutrality so that whatever decision comes in the end stands and isn't able to be challenged by not being facilitated by a neutral party. And that's where Jennifer's group comes in. That's why that neutrality is so important. And so even if there's a whiff of an applicant-funded contractor working on behalf of the applicant, moving the process through, the concern for us would be that in honor of the applicant, that final decision will not be as strong as if it were done by a neutral facilitated group, not funded by the applicant. That is one of the concerns that we're kind of getting at there.
So right there, I had a question about
Yeah.
when you talk about applicant funded, is that necessarily the same as applicant selected? Meaning a lot of times, you go get your own engineering report and, submit it to us, or I understood that the recycled asphalt folks hired their own company, Herrera or whatever. But is there another process where we ask you to fund a third-party consultant that we select through some sort of RFP or neutral process so that we would be assured of the neutrality, but they would be paying for it because we don't have the resources? Is that legal, or is that doable, or is that not on the table?
Go for it, Jennifer.
I'm nodding because I believe I'm looking at Jeremy and he's nodding too, so that's good. Yeah, I think that would be a preferred route if we could make that happen. Maintaining that neutrality and being able to choose a contractor that's going to serve the interests of the community, I think is pretty critical in these especially these major rezone and comp plan amendment projects. But Jeremy, are there other operational things that I'm not thinking of with regard to that kind of a contract?
I didn't think so right now, and I do believe the recycled asphalt contractor was actually hired by the county using funds provided by the applicant. So we have actually already done that in the past.
Yeah, Herrera was selected by us.
Yeah.
And that was a research.
That was an independent group.
So the answer is yes, we can do it that way, and we do it that way at times.
And so this is where
That's what I'm advocating for.
But we have other situations, just to flip it over, where, like I've gotten with Brett into many citizen issues where somebody had an engineering report and they went and just got their own report, and maybe another citizen got another report.
Right.
And it's a professional input, stormwater plan or a whatever. I mean, so it's not the only way we do it. We do have situations in our code where we allow somebody to get their own professional thing that we then, I won't say rubber stamp because that sounds derogatory, but that we rely on that information. We do not do an independent review. We do not go out and double check it with a neutral third party. We accept that. So I just want to make sure that we're clear as a board of what we're doing, because those are two different, from my perspective, those are very distinct scenarios.
Yes, and so that's, to Jennifer's point, that's research and analysis, and we can pick the contractor. We did have funding from the applicant. And so picking out what is the request, right? So being very specific on what's being funded and what's being asked of that contractor is really important. We've heard lots of different things, and that's why this conversation is so helpful. Because one of the things that we've heard from applicants is, why can't I just fund it and I'll do all the public input, I'll do all the outreach, I'll do all the facilitation of the process. And that is where we start to say, we're gonna lose some level of neutrality. And that doesn't, from our perspective, serve the applicant. In the research and analysis, that's the lakeside model that Jennifer was referring to at the beginning. So that's the kind of the delineation that we need to better understand from the board. Are you, the board, thinking that the external consultant should be facilitating the neutral process funded by the contractor? If so, we have some caution flags for that in terms of serving those customers. If it's about research and analysis, we think that we have some potential ways forward on that. And then third is internally, we know that we've got some gaps in our knowledge base that we do need professional services. In fact, you're going to receive during the budget request process, a request for professional services budgeting item so that we can go out there into the community and get professional knowledge on ag topics specifically. So those are kind of the three buckets. Facilitate, caution flags, research and analysis, we think that we can find paths forward. Contracting external for technical skills, we need it. So those are kind of the three big areas that we're thinking. Is that
I'll
helpful?
go around the horn, I saw him go first.
Yeah, and
Thanks, Sean.
just to provide a perspective in terms of what the role of staff plays in all this whole context. And Josh speaks about neutrality, objectivity, because they serve you. We all serve you. Because when an item comes for your final decision, you deserve an objective approach leading to a final decision. Because at the end is making sure that whatever decision you are about to make is serving the overarching context of the public and the citizens of Thurston County. And I'd like to go back to the conversation that Josh had. You know, an applicant comes on a piece of land, said, I'd like to change this to a different use. The neighbors have the opportunity to provide feedback on that because they will be directly affected by the actions that you may take or may not take. And that is what I believe the critical role the staff plays in making sure that it may seem bureaucratic, it may seem long-term, but the public process is essential, I believe, before you make an informed decision. Because you don't serve just a single citizen who requests a change on a land use. You serve the neighbors who may be affected by those changes. We just had a discussion this morning on the Maple Lane. Public comment was essential for you to take an action.
Which got overruled.
Which, you know, it went around, it just went through the process, but now you are in the position, now you explore the position to say, now, we need to be proactive because you have the obligation to the citizens, right? And that is I believe, the key role that staff plays on this. A holistic approach of, and that has been my position, at least my perspective, a holistic, you know, consultant-driven process may not give you the value that you deserve. And staff plays that objective approach in seeing every single document. When it comes to you, you feel confident that perhaps you have the right information.
Commissioner Edwards.
That's helpful.
I guess I kind of differ with the county manager's position on that because I think when we did hire, was it Herrera? Is that the group that was mentioned?
For the research?
Yeah, we didn't tell Lakeside, hey, go find somebody that you want. They came to us and said, we just want to do it right. You go ahead, select whoever you want. And Lakeside paid for it. That's all I'm saying, is allow the applicant to pay the bill. Let these folks hire professionals at whatever level so that we can get the job done instead of putting it on the bottom of the docket list, for an example, and letting it just languish there for 3-4 years and go away. And I'm gonna use a good example would be the Barnett property down by Tenino. That just languished for 6 years. He paid all kinds of application fees, and I guess you guys gave him some money back, I guess.
After Jennifer got in the case, it was resolved in 1.5 years.
Yeah, well, anyway, I mean, resolved. I don't know if that's the correct term because he had put in an application for cluster housing of some type. I don't remember all the particulars. But in the bottom line, we never did anything about it. And then eventually, conservation group and the game department, and I think we're gonna be involved in that, ended up, it was a good deal for the community that we ended up with that process. So the delay maybe in that case was good, but it certainly wasn't good for the applicant. And when the applicant comes in, we always say, well, we don't have enough staff. We don't have enough staff. Well, let the applicant pay the bill and the staff can hire a professional group, not an activist group. You know, I don't know, get 3 applicants or something to put in there that could do the job and let staff go through it. But what you'll find with these other jurisdictions that are doing it is they do a heck of a job and they run everything through the proper entity, which in this case would be the county, to make sure that they're doing it right. And I'm sure our own staff, when they're doing things, are probably getting a supervisor to review and say, okay, I'm at this point, here, my next step is I'm going here. I mean, I'm not a planner, I don't know how that works exactly, but I would envision the Harara people doing that same thing. That took another couple years.
Go ahead, Commissioner Mejia.
I'm shooting a burst of bubble here. She looks like me out here.
2 points. So with what Commissioner Edwards, I feel like sounds good at a higher level, but once you start getting into the weeds of it, it sounds to me like if you have money, then you can afford this extra service to process your application quicker. And there's like not really equity in that, if only the people who have money can come in and pay for their application to just speed through because they can go through third-party contractor. It just doesn't really seem fair to the person who comes in and has their life savings and they're just, waiting their turn and they're seeing how these companies with big, deep pockets come in and can do that. So that's point 1. Point 2, which kind of not related to what Commissioner Edwards said, is it appears that the Lakeside contractor, that worked out. But what didn't we also do that with North Point and that kind of ended up not well? No?
No, we
Never
never
got
got
there.
there.
Well, I was gonna ask, this may be kind of connected to Commissioner Mejia's question, is if we take the Beaver Creek, because we're all familiar with what that's about, could you give me an example, you trying to apply your attachment A here? Can you give me an example of a piece of that project that might fall within the green and might fall within the red? I remember you talking about, Jennifer, there'd have to be I don't know what you called it, I called it GMA analysis about whether or not there was sufficient industrial lands within existing zoning areas, and that's something that seems like it's more in the county bailiwick, but can you give me, like, out of the couple, 3 things that we've all heard about, like the citizens have talked about that, they've talked about the water impacts to the Beaver Creek and the shallow aquifer and all the hydrology components. Some of the things that we've heard about from the public, which ones do you think would fall under the green?
I think both of those that you mentioned would fall into the green and industrial lands needs analysis. We have some information from TRPC, as you've been presented with, around the industrial needs capacity in Thurston County. TRPC's information says basically we're good. We don't need any more. There are other claims from other folks who are, industrial lands developers who said, actually, this region really needs more and they need these large sites that the current urban areas can't support. That's their argument. We need research into that. Someone who can do sort of a regionally focused industrial needs analysis. What is the truth? What are the metrics? So that when you're making your decision, whether it's being informed by the right data. So that is one aspect of Beaver Creek we'd want to look at. The other aspect is some of those hydrology questions. What would and again, it's a rezone, it's not a project. So we're not looking at a specific project, but what would the world of industrial uses that could be placed on a site that was rezoned from a rural residential zoning now where it's a dairy farm, and comparatively, what are the risks and potential issues with water quality, with wildlife habitat? We've had folks talk about the fact this is an important wildlife corridor for Thurston County. We would need an environmental study of those issues that could be contracted out, that piece, which would provide you, again, a neutral third party, here's what we're finding, set of data to base your decision on. Those are the two pieces of that I think would be most appropriate. But I just want to be very clear, once, if the county decided to do that and to launch that type of effort, people know, right? People know that's happening. Everything we do is totally transparent. That's when the community dial will get turned up. That's when that work will come to the county, not just to set up the scope of work for the contracts and manage the contracts, the typical staff work that comes with that. This is going to be a highly controversial, really, project, and we will have a lot of community interest and a lot of questions coming at the county, and county staff will need to be dealing with that. Even though we don't have the capacity to be working on it now. So if that's the path forward, which is totally fine, it's up to the board, that will impact that same staff's ability to continue work on other docketed items. There is an impact. There are only so many hours in the day. And so
I have a question about that. When you say that the county staff would be impacted by those calls, if you will, you're always gonna have activist groups, one way or the other. That's just the way the world works. And so if a group calls and says, hey, what's going on this, or when's that hearing, or whatever, let that hired person deal with all of those. And I don't think county staff has to take an exceptional workload. That can be part of the workload that the individual that hires and that pays for, not hires. I think that's the key. Somebody's gonna be paying the bill. The county can hire an independent, not an activist group, one way or the other, a professional engineering firm, that they can deal with everything, setting the hearings, the whole thing. They can deal with all that, but it has to be through our staff, but they do all the legwork, including answering the phone. They know all the rules. When somebody says, well, you can't do X because of whatever, and when they know their job, all they have to say, well, that's really not true. Under growth management, if there is not adequate room for industrial growth for a community, then it can fall outside of the urban growth area. I'm just kind of picking up little pieces. I don't even know if I'm accurate about that, but I don't envision county staff having to do that. I envision the person that gets hired, or the firm that gets hired, not hired, paid for by, or whatever, because we don't want to hire them. Because then you end up just with the possibility of a biased opinion one way or the other. And I don't think we want that. I think we want a fair opinion to be done. What's going to happen is this could expedite the process. And as far as Commissioner Mejia's comment, it goes both ways about here on that Beaver Creek thing, whatever it is, there's a farmer that wants to get out of the farming business, and he wants to settle his estate, so to speak, for the future, and it's not the best farmland in the world anyway. So he has decided to get my money out of my property, I gotta hire this other outfit to do this job for me. So, it's either way, money talks and BS walks, that's been around for a long time, and it's kind of true. Unfortunately, we are in a capitalist system, and if you have to pay your way to get ahead. If you own 2 acres, you can't do a 100-home development. You have to have gotten some assets to get there to that point. I see Josh.
I do, yeah. And so thank you for that perspective. your scenario, we started here in the green side, and then just talking about the process moved over into the red side.
Okay.
And that's our recommendation, of what we believe can be done. That's the research and analysis, the Herrera kind of concept that we had talked about. But then the process and ensuring that stakeholder information, people that come in, that that's fair and neutral, play that scenario out. Yes, they're hired by the government, by our group, but funded by the applicant. It's going to turn the dial up of the people at the external community.
So what?
When you say that, you mean the, like, increase the suspicion level of people in the community?
Sure.
Or let's flip it the other way, say an environmentalist group hired us to do, or excuse me, an environmentalist group funded us to hire somebody to do an analysis of that area. Would the business community think that that was going to be fair and neutral? It's hard to say, likely not. And then I wanted to go back to the question that Commissioner Mejia brought up in terms of equity. Every spring, the board provides the opportunity for equity in your decision of the ranking of our work. This isn't the staff coming up with this. This is the Board of County Commissioners deciding which applications get worked on and when. And as I said at the beginning, we're working through that backlog. The Barnett's success was not just that his property got sold, but that finally the board was able to see exactly how long different applications have been in, and then you were able to rank it. So it actually came up in the ranking because of the transparency that Jennifer brought in.
But
So
that
that's
never got
the-
done.
Yeah, because it was
Nothing was
ranked.
done by the county.
Agreed. But we were able to finally highlight it to the commissioners, and you guys provided excellent direction, so thank you for that. And then something externally happened to the property. But that process is currently working and is in process.
I gotta differ with you, it's not working.
10
It's not
docket
working
items.
If 6 years pass and you hold a person's money and don't do anything.
But Josh is saying, he's not saying it's the process going back that far is working. He's saying that as of the last 2 years, it's working.
Oh, I think we're doing.
And that guy
I
was
think we're doing
already,
better.
he'd already waited, as you say, a
Yeah.
long time.
Yeah.
And so it didn't work because.
Didn't work for him.
Didn't work for him because he was going back predating these changes.
He started when he was 79, trying to settle his estate, and he's making it to 85 now, finally getting it settled. I just say, I don't look at that as working, and that's where I differ, that I think our job is to respond to citizen needs without hurting the environment. I don't wanna hurt the environment, but I wanna be able to accommodate growth. I don't wanna drag my feet and create a no-growth situation or only high dollar, cause the dollar talks. So if development costs a lot of money, homes cost more. Where are we ever gonna reach attainable housing, for an example? If we don't get things done, if we continue to drag on, I just don't think we'll ever get there.
County manager.
You know, and this whole process is predicated on a public process. And let me go back to my initial comments. I'm not opposed to no consultants. I mean, the consultants has to be part of what process is how in Commissioner Edwards talks about, the rights of an individual who likes to do something with their property.
As long as it doesn't hurt the
Right.
environment or
But-
neighbors.
No, absolutely, and on point, but the question is, but
Within the law.
what those changes, they're gonna be affecting the neighbors. The neighbors have the opportunity to tell you what they think about the proposal. And that is the public process. And it's not just a single approach and say, my property rights, I respect that. And I want to do this with my property, I want to change this. These changes are gonna be affecting my neighbors. And the neighbors will not have the opportunity to tell you how they're gonna be affected. And that is, I believe.
Why
the public
would they
process.
not have the opportunity to tell you
But-
how?
No, what I'm trying to say is, that is the public process.
I know, I'm not against the public process.
Let me finish, please. That is the public process in which staff is providing the objectivity to you when you get to the point of making a decision. So I think is the balancing here. Is the balance to bring professional services, is the balance to bring staff within the whole context to help us move forward with the scope of work. And I think that's probably what you hear today is that balance. There's an opportunity to incorporate some consultants to keep moving forward in the process.
And it's those the three big buckets are really the important piece. The middle one is the research and analysis. We think that there is paths forward there. The one that we definitely need, and we're gonna come to you for a budget request, is the technical support. And then the one that we really think that we should take a caution on is the process. If we're outsourcing the process that's meant to ensure neutrality, that provides concern.
I have no problem with bringing in all kinds of outside comment. I have no problem with that, and I think that's healthy. But in the end, when we do it through an activist process, the only thing I can say is the Maytown case cost the taxpayers $16 million. Now, that didn't come out of our budget. We had insurance on that. But in the end, the court ruled 9-0. Our Supreme Court ruled 9-0 against the county, said their process was flawed in doing that. And I'm not saying they would have got the development through, but they're gonna keep picking away at us. There's gonna be a gravel pit over there or whatever there is. People are never gonna be happy because you're never gonna make people happy when you have growth because you have change, because I don't want a car driving by my place. Well,
So
it's a part of growth.
I do want to save some time for Brett, because there's some great successes on the horizon that I want to preview for you, but Commissioner Mejia has a question.
Yes, I do have a question. Thank you for bringing that part in about the justices, because my next question was going to be, what is the liability of the county in hiring third-party consultants?
It depends on the what, and that's why this is colored red, is we believe that there is a high liability in terms of not pure
Well,
neutral.
let me comment on that, please. I believe that as long as you hire a non-biased, non-interested party that the other guy pays for, I don't think we have any exposure, as long as, because all we're doing is following a process that's in law, the State Growth Management Act. You gotta follow that. These people know it. They actually know it probably better than a lot of our staff people know it. And they just go right on through and do what needs to be done. And when a call comes in from a citizen that doesn't like it, that person gives the answer, the expert person that we hire, not an activist person one way or the other. And let's keep it all in the middle of the road. There won't be any more exposure by a person that we hire. It's no different than the prosecuting attorney hiring a attorney that's a professional in wireless. I'll just use that as an example. And he deputizes that person. So it's the same as a county employee.
But that person still had to take his proposal to the information to the planning commission and go through our process.
Sure.
I guess I'm wondering, you're talking at a very high level,
Mhm.
and this is more specific. So I'm wondering, are there things on this sheet that are in red that you disagree, that you think should be in the green column? That you think that we should hire people to do, preparing staff reports, preparing draft amendment language for us, for public participation, outreach design? Like, what is it you want? Are you quibbling with Josh's proposal?
No, I guess my difference is that I think whoever, if we did this, whoever was hired by the county is gonna be a county employee. They're gonna do everything right that the county employee does. Why wouldn't they do everything like that? They're gonna know the process. These are professional planners that know growth management probably better than most of our folks. And I'm just saying that phone call that might come in. I just use that as an example because Josh brought it up, or Jennifer did, about how they have to, our staff then have to waste their time dealing with that. Well, I wouldn't have our staff dealing with that. That project manager would just be a project manager, hired out of a different firm that's a professional organization, and they're gonna tell that citizen I can't imagine they're gonna lie to them. They're gonna tell them the truth on everything. And no different than if one of our county staff, because it is our county staff. I mean, we're actually enhancing our budget ability to provide a service that's just gonna end up a little faster. Then the inevitable is gonna happen anyway, probably. And if somebody doesn't like what we do, then they go to a hearings examiner and go around us anyway. So I don't see it's a big difference. We just let Josh, as the manager, him and his team, put out an RFP. Hey, we got this big project coming up. And we're gonna need a planner to work on that, because we don't have enough planners to work on that. So we just put it at the bottom of the list, and by putting it at the bottom of the list, we stop it from moving forward and getting done. That's one way to control it. I think that's a liability issue at some point, somewhere down the road, but I don't know that.
So I'd say maybe as an action item, I appreciate your perspective and the theoretical hypothesis of different things that we could and maybe could do for different things. For us, it's about specifically what's the application, what's the item, what's the docket item, and then have that conversation about how we could apply what you're hypothesizing. We believe when we come up with these docket items, that the research and analysis, that there are places that are currently items on our docket that we could use consultants for the research and analysis. And that could potentially be funded by the applicant. We think that there's a path forward there. We think that
Yeah, but
that's
you've
an
got that
exciting-
under the red.
That's an exciting potential.
Pardon?
And then in terms of the technical professionals, we are gonna come to you, we're gonna need assistance because currently we have no professional services budget. So we're gonna ask to hire contractors, but we need budgeting authority to do that. And then when it comes up during the docket items, and we can maybe talk about this per each individual docket item, as you're ranking, again, the board gets to decide what we work on. We're not burying anything. This is the democratic process.
Except you tell us what is possible. You do tell us, well, this is gonna take so many staff hours or FTEs to work on it. And we take you at your word for that.
We provide you information.
And you provide the information and we say, well, gee, we can't do that. All I'm saying is, okay, well, this guy, we don't have enough staff to do this project. If the applicant is willing to pay to hire an FTE, go hire an FTE. Get them from that other firm. However you decide to do it, I'm not even saying how it needs to be done. I'm just trying to assist the citizen in getting their project done, whatever their project is. But at the same time, I don't wanna hurt the environment. I don't wanna hurt some citizen that doesn't want a road put through or something, like our school built or whatever. I mean, there's.
So
Some
we
people
spent
don't.
55 minutes on Jennifer's group. Now we have 54
2 minutes,
minutes.
you can do it.
4 minutes.
We can cut into capitalization.
And so I think what we probably want to do for you, Brett, is I would like to schedule another briefing because this is another big change.
Sure.
We're updating the conditional site approval, editing it, like we're taking so many pieces out of it. I'll just high level preview. And years past, the CSA was created so that we, the staff in Brett's group, could do internal land use review. High groundwater, drainage, lots of different things that we thought we were providing a service to the citizens. But that we've sourced has been one of the major issues of the Bring Me Another Rock. There are professionals, external, that are paid to do these things that have stamps and signatures. We believe that we can be contracting that work out, or excuse me, the applicant can contract that work out. They're regulated, we should accept their stamp. We currently don't do that in much of Brett's group. So we're bringing that to you, to the board in the next couple of months. We think it's gonna be a game changer in terms of external consultants, professional services. So, sorry to just kind of like wrap it up real quick. That's a preview, like it's a coming attraction.
Real quick, Josh.
Yeah.
One thing Commissioner Edwards hit in passing that I think is valid point. On the green list, it says background policy research needing specialized expertise. But then in the red column, you say research and policy analysis.
Yeah.
I think that's was confusing to him.
Yeah.
What is it?
Internal staff review of that externally created research. So Herrera created, they said, here's where the water could maybe seep into the ground. Great, we're gonna accept that information, but we're also going to review it internally, so it's a check and balance essentially.
Yeah, you might just.
And I think Jennifer is gonna
Yeah.
talk smarter than.
Yeah, and we use the example of Herrera on the RAP, you know.
Mhm.
And when Herrera provided the initial report,
Thank you.
through the review, you know, they have to go back and a couple back and forth until they have the, so that is the role of the staff.
They'll submit a draft report.
So they
you
submit
guys-
a draft report, there's review, and there found some issues, technical issues, and then it was a back and forth until a report was finally accepted.
Jennifer?
I was just gonna say that the key words there distinguishing those two bullet points are the specialized expertise, you know. Is trained, we have an amazing planning staff, highly trained, know GMA, know all these issues, can do the research pretty much on anything you throw in front of them. I think there are places though where that specialized expertise really can up the ante on the level and the quality of data that you're gonna get to make your decision. Like market analysis issues, industrial needs issues, the things I've mentioned before. Those are the two different things. Routine, rezones, planning projects, anything that doesn't need that kind of higher level specialized expertise, never going to be a problem for our own staff to do. So that's, I think, the distinguishing factor.
So I would just add the word routine in front of the second bullet on the red side. So that it's clear that why the green's in green and why the red's in red.
So under the heading of routine, long-range planning activities,
Okay, I got
second
you.
bullet.
Yeah.
You've got the word routine there, but.
I do. It's kind of, it captures every bullet on the list.
Okay, all right. Well, I mean, I'm just trying to clear it up because
Mhm.
that caught both our attention.
Totally. And I want to make sure that it's clear, just as we're coming towards the end, we're excited to try and figure out ways to improve our process and bring in professional services into this discussion. It's the what, and that we're really about serving those three customers that we talked about at the beginning. We want to make sure that the information that we bring to you is able to stand so you can make an objective decision. I think that was right on point.
I'm gonna go buy a lottery ticket, and if I win the multi-billion-dollar lottery, I'll just donate money to the county, and then we can hire more planners. That's kind of what I wanna do, but
You want to make big government.
no, I don't want big government. I want adequate government to do the job for the citizens at hand. That's all I want.
We'll
Do you wanna-
need new offices for him, Commissioner.
I'll build that courthouse.
I just wanted to say that this discussion was useful because I was, the RAP thing happened before I was on the board. And I actually had thought that they had, that applicant funded meant applicant selected. So if what we're all talking about is county selected, applicant funded, I'm in a much better comfort level with that on these key points. So that's important that I got to that level of understanding. And then, but I do think that Commissioner Mejia's point is valid about, you know, you're already losing a little bit of credibility community-wise when it's perceived to be pay to play. And that may be something that we just have to balance, you know, you just have to accept that, because that's the word, but I mean, you have to recognize that, because I think that is reality too. But, you know, there's,
And maybe we can probably predicate on a model that we already utilize in other parts of the county. And I can probably use Public Works. We have a series of consultants. They provide specific set of expertise, archaeological studies. That you just approve a contract for material testing. So, and that is the model I believe that Josh wants to implement.
Exactly.
It just have a series of consultants that we can tap onto the specific niches, and as Jennifer stated. But it's still a little behind the scene is a review the county staff has to do to make sure those reports and those deliverables are accurate from the best of our abilities before it comes to you.
and Josh, I mean, you've made this point to me privately that serves the applicant as well, because I mean, if you make sure there's that layered county review, it makes their project then is more defensible.
More credible.
And insulates them from attack and appeal.
And brings validity to your decision-making process as a result provides the benefit to the citizen.
And I also want to thank you for the 3 customer thing, because that's really important to me that everybody understands. I don't serve an interest group, I serve the public. And they don't always have an organized voice or a lobbying group or something. And we're their barometer of who has to be, served by our processes. So thank you for kind of putting that out right up front.
I mean, and we have to balance it out. I mean, just like this wireless thing coming up in this community group that wants to, I see some validity there. I just don't know how much they can really impact the federal law that we're dealing with. But I think they're valid. I think it's worth having that committee.
So I don't want to belabor the point, but I want to make sure that we have a clear action. Now, this is just informational, but from hearing this, I think it might be helpful when we come into the first quarter, we're talking about the docket, that perhaps we can provide our input on what we think in terms of professional services. If it's that first bucket, we need technical support. If it's that second bucket, research and analysis, or if it's that third, facilitation. And we can have that on a docket by docket item.
It really plays right into that chart. And you've done it in a couple different ways,
Yeah.
but it's that chart that shows the staffing
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
involved. And maybe you'd show alternate A, A is
Yeah.
purely county, B is if a consultant were to be funded by the applicant, maybe the county staffing drops and we can add another item. I mean, that can play into our prioritization.
That's kind of what I'm looking for, is the ability for, now this falls contrary to Commissioner Mejia's point about money, you don't get you places, but it's just the reality of doing business. But I think if the applicant is willing to hire a county employee that becomes a county employee, if you will, or is deputized, but bring them from a firm that they select, not the applicant. I can see now, if you thought that Herrera was hired by the applicant, how that would skew your position on it. To be honest with you, because we never get a chance to talk unless we're in a public meeting, but I just wondered about it. I mean, because the county actually went out, and I think you went through a selection process to find that person.
We did,
That
so,
Herrera,
just so
right?
we know, we're adding work to Jennifer Davis's plate as she gets those docket items. If she was here, she might be kicking me, but.
But I want to help the applicant along
Yeah.
at their expense. That's all.
I do want to put a plug in though real quickly that you do have only one planning commission and they do meet twice a month all year round. But everything has to go through the planning commission, and
But that's according to law, right?
that's according to law, absolutely. And I think that it's important also when we have the docketing conversations and how we might prioritize things and who does what, that we keep in mind capacity of the planning commission to handle multiple projects at a time.
Oh, yeah.
The Shoreline Master Program, we've had 58, 59 planning commission meetings on that over many years, and it's still not done. There are places in this democratic sausage-making public process that get gummed up and take longer,
Yeah.
and we can't always control those things. So it's just something to be thinking about with the size of projects and what you anticipate to be going faster, and if it's possible with the capacity, even of just the planning commission in that process. So
And that, I think, is another meeting in terms of planning commission and process, but thank you for your time.
And we create
And
bigger.
for the record, my position on recycled asphalt hinged on the alignment with the sub-area plan. I did not actually make a decision based on the consultant work. I thought, so just so that's out there. Okay, thank you guys.
Thank you very
More
much.
to come. Sorry, Brad.
Good job, Brett.
Thank you.
Hey, Brett, you were great.
Yeah, good job, Brad.